you glad to be in the house of God today? Are you glad you're here for an Easter conference? Are you hungry for the Lord? I look at all your expectant faces, beautiful, bright, cheery, ready to go, hungry for God. And you don't know how beautiful you look just from standing here. I can see all of you from various nations, and that's fantastic, You look fantastic. Turn to your neighbor and say, he's talking about me again. I thank Pastor Peter for inviting me. I know we're in for a good time. I know you're hungry for the Lord. And I know that what God has done in your life, is just a speckle compared to what He's going to do in the coming days. The best is yet to come. Can somebody say an amen to that? And I know that after this Easter conference, God is going to, just pour His Spirit into us, that we will chart differently. How many of you want to meet and encounter the Lord and chart differently after this conference? Can I see your hands? Wave it in the air. Okay. I pray that according to your hunger and your thirst, you will be filled and you will be satisfied. So, Father, we just ask for your wonderful presence here this morning and right through this conference. Lord, empower us. Help us to meet with Jesus, we ask. In His name we pray. All God's people said, Amen. My name is Philip Lin. I come from Malaysia. Many years ago, in the days of Jurassic Park, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I studied here in England, and worked here in London as well. How many of you know that London is the center of the universe? Can I see your hands? You are in the center of the universe right now. Very, very privileged place. What happens in London often changes the world and impacts the world in many, many ways, not just financially and socioeconomically, but many other ways and ideas as well. So you're in a very, very important place. I work as a doctor and in Malaysia, and I pastor a church in Malaysia as well. This church actually meets in a 5-star hotel in the city of Kota Kinabalu in East Malaysia. And it's a 5-star hotel by the sea, and it's there 24/7. That means every day we're there. We have a long-term lease there. All our offices are embedded in this hotel. The auditorium's there, all the breakout rooms and everything else, the Sunday school and everything is in there. The youth meets there. So 24/7 we are there. It's a 1,000-room hotel in the city center, just by the sea, and with 7 swimming pools, 14 restaurants. It's got an international marina with yachts sailing in from all over the world. It's surrounded by a 27-hole golf course, and it's got wonderful sparkling coral islands, just 10 minutes away by boat, and you can have the time of your life. You don't need to go to Bali or Phuket or the Caribbean. You just need to come to Kota Kinabalu. So I invite you. How do I come and visit me sometime? Can I see your hands? Praise God. That's my bid for tourism promotion in Malaysia. So whenever you come, please remind them that you came because there was some tourism promotion done, and hopefully they will give you back my commission. Up to now, I've not received a single cent from them. I'd like to introduce to you my beautiful wife, Nancy, and we've been married for 31 years. We got married in the UK. And we've got 3 wonderful children. The youngest of whom is 15 years old. Her name is Sarah. She's with the youth somewhere. Our 2 other children are grown up, and they're all at the moment studying in Australia. Sarah's just studying in Perth, and so we brought her over here because it's the Easter holidays. I'd like to speak today, and thank you, Pastor Peter, for the kind introduction. He couldn't figure out whether I was a pastor or a doctor or whatever. I'm a pastor, doctor, pastor. So I'm a doctor-pastor in the weekdays. I'm a pastor-doctor in the weekends. So some of my people ask me, what's the difference between a pastor-doctor and a doctor-pastor? Well, I say it's very simple. Weekdays, when they see me, you pay. Weekends is free, okay? So because this is a long public holiday weekend, it's free. It's your neighbor say, it comes for free, okay? And integrated in me, I am a pastor, doctor, pastor. In the city, people know I'm a pastor, they know I'm a doctor. And in my practice, they know I'm a pastor. In the church, they know I'm a pastor, doctor. So it's integrated within me. So if you're interested in seeing and knowing how to bring the gospel into the workplace and what God has called you to do in the workplace, come for the workshop after lunch today. But it's been a joy to pastor this church. I've been pastoring this church for the last 13 years. And today I'd like to take you through, in a very kind of quick, sweeping way, Matthew 24 to 25. So if you've got your Bibles, please turn with me to Matthew 24, 25. Johnny, can you bring up my Bible from inside my bag? Inside my bag, yes. Okay, the white Bible. And Matthew 24 to 25. Now, this session is the basis of what we're going to do the rest of the Easter conference. And I call it, this session today, Spiritual Singularity. And the reason for that is very simple. The grand unified hypothesis or theory is the holy grail of physics today. And it's simply, the grand unified theory, it basically states this, that, at one point before Big Bang happened, many scientists believe that's how the world came into being. Big Bang, somebody say Big Bang? Okay, that's how it came into being. Just at the point before Big Bang happened, then all the forces that were in the universe were concentrated in a point called singularity. And we know that there are 4 forces that govern the universe today. Only 4 forces. Anywhere you go, whether you go subatomically, chemical reactions, or right into the cosmic and the universe, only 4 forces govern the whole universe. Okay, known to man. And they are gravity, electromagnetism, the weak internuclear force, radioactive decay, and a strong internuclear force. Only 4 forces. So scientists believe that it is possible to integrate all these 4 forces into one single equation. Because at one point in time, in singularity, before Big Bang happened, they were all integrated as one. If you can discover this equation, you can predict virtually everything that can happen in the world today. Whether it's chemical reactions, subatomic reactions, right up to cosmological, happenings, you can predict that. And that's the Holy Grail. Now, up to now, scientists have not been able to integrate all the 4 forces into one equation. They've managed to combine electromagnetism with radioactive force and internuclear force, but not gravity. And up to now, that's not succeeded. But the main thinking is this: if you can put it all into one, then you will understand the universe. And that's the Holy Grail of physics. People like Stephen Hawking, Einstein, and all these people, and some of the best brains in the world today, are pursuing this Holy Grail. Whether they will achieve it or not, I don't know. But what I'd like to say is that in Matthew 24, 25, you will have the singularity, the spiritual equivalent of singularity, spiritual singularity, if you like. Where if you understand Matthew 24, 25, it will help you to live the rest of your Christian life. It will help you to live the rest. You will know what you are called to do. You will know how to live. Because integrated in Matthew 24, 25 are the 4 parables that really matter, and the 4 parables, like the 4 forces, which will integrate into one Christian life as to how you ought to live. And the context of Matthew 24 and 25 is very simple. It's really one of Jesus' major and last discourses when he was on the Mount of Olives, a few days, possibly a week, before he went to the cross. And he was discussing the last days. That's what the disciples asked him, when will the last days happen? And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the Olivet Discourse, he shared with them. And he told them what were the signs of the last days. And then, in the context of the last days, he told them the 4 parables. In other words, if you want to be ready for the last days, if you really want to be always ready for the last days, so that you are never caught up in surprise, so that you will always be ready whether it comes tomorrow, or the next hour, or the next week, or the next 10 years. If you want to live in such a way, then live according to the 4 parables. That's spiritual singularity. And the 4 parables he told, as you well know, are the parable of the faithful and evil servant. That's Matthew 24, verse 45 onwards. The parable of the wise and foolish virgins, chapter 25, verse 1 onwards. The parable of the talents, that's chapter 25, verse 14 onwards. And the parable of the sheep and the goats. Now, many of you would know these parables very well. How many of you know something of these parables? Can I see you wave your hands? Wave it, lift up the hand, wave your hands. So I do not need to go into detail about the parables, but you can read it for yourself. Okay? The 4 parables will tell you these things. Firstly, the parables of faithful and wise servant will tell you the grace that God has given you to serve, the way you should serve. The wise and foolish virgins will give you the grace to seek, how you should seek God in your life. The parable of the talents will give you the grace to sow, how you should sow your life. And And the parable of the sheep and the goats will tell you about the grace that God has given to you to share. Okay? The grace to serve, the grace to seed, the grace to sow, and the grace to share. If you have these four things and you understand the proper context and it's integrated into your life, you have spiritual singularity. You will never, ever, ever wander off again in knowing what has God called me to do in my life. How can I live to its max? What am I primarily here for? If you understand the four parables, you will know the way you're called to serve, to seek, to sow, and to share, and the grace God has given to you. Now, spiritual singularity in Matthew 24:25, I would rename them the suddenly parables. The four parables are the suddenly parables. Why do I call them suddenly parables? Because if you read these four parables, you will find out that the whole understanding and the whole kind of spoken or unspoken phrase and the whole spoken kind of culture behind these four parables is really about being ready for suddenly. Because suddenly, Jesus comes. When you don't expect him to come, he comes. Suddenly the world has come to an end. Suddenly the master comes back to the house. And I call them the suddenly parables. Because if you are ready and you've lived in spiritual singularity, you will always be ready for suddenly. You will never, never be afraid of suddenly. Now, many of us who live in the world today, we don't like the word suddenly, right? We don't like. And the students don't like the word suddenly. Suddenly, their exams. Suddenly, the lecturer says, or the teacher says, exams tomorrow, test tomorrow. Nobody likes suddenly. Suddenly, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get a phone call. Your kids are not home yet. You're called from a police station. Suddenly, nobody likes that. Suddenly, there's a call from the hospital. Nobody likes suddenly. Businessmen hate the word suddenly. They don't like, suddenly there's a global financial crisis. Suddenly there's a meltdown in the stock market. You wake up, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average has dropped like crazy. Suddenly, businessmen hate that. Students hate that. People in the workplace hate suddenly. Families hate suddenly. Nobody likes the word suddenly. So I call them the suddenly parables. But if you live in such a way that you're always suddenly never frightens you, then you are ready. You will always be ready. You will never lose out. Now, the word suddenly comes in words like this. As the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, suddenly. As the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man, suddenly. 2 men in the field, one taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding in the mill, there will be one taken, the other left, suddenly. It's all about suddenly, you see these parables. And then it goes on, it says things like, the master of the house will come on a day when the servant is not looking for him, suddenly. Watch, for you do not know the day or the hour the Son of Man is coming, suddenly. After a long period, the Lord of the servants came to settle accounts with them, suddenly. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, suddenly. See, it's all that background theme of the whole of the parables. Now, just very quickly, how can we know when suddenly will happen? How many would like to know when Jesus is coming again? Can I see your hands? Wave it. Wave it in the air. Because if you know when Jesus is coming again, you've got time to sell your British Telecom shares. You still have time. How can we know when suddenly will happen? How should we live so that we will always be ready for suddenly? That's what Matthew 24:25 is all about. That's what I want to draw the theme for this whole conference, so that we will never be caught up. Now, the world has always been absorbed with the end of the world, obsessed with the end of the world. Hollywood has tapped into this big time, and many of you have watched those movies as well. Now, it all started from the days of a kind of children's story, the story of Chicken Licken. Anyone remember the story called Chicken Licken? You brought up Chicken Licken. Remember this chicken? This chicken. It was walking in the woods one day, and an acorn fell on her head. Was that right? Yeah. And then she said, "The world, this part of the sky has fallen down, hit my head. It must be the end of the world." And you know what happened? She went to tell her friend about it. Her friend was a hen. And it was Hen Len she went to tell. And Hen Len got excited and told Duck Luck. And together they went to tell Goose Loose. And then went to tell Turkey Lurkey. And it just went on, and Swan Ron and all that kind of things. And eventually, they all followed little Chicken Licken. Because the world was coming to an end. They needed to find a place where they were safe. Because the sky had fallen down. And they met a fox. Fox Lox was his name. And this cunning fox led them all to his death. where he finished them all up and ate them all up. So basically, you know, if you're one of this kind of hooting false prophets, you better watch it because, you know, you get swallowed up by the devil. But it all started with chicken. They can turn to your neighbor and say, it all started with the chicken. And that's why Hollywood tapped on it. The top 10 end of the world films. What was this? The Day After Tomorrow. Global warming, you know, and the whole world's flooded. What about this? What is it called? 2012. How many of you seen the movie 2012? Okay, again about, you know, the whole earth being covered by waves because the core of the earth actually has heated up because of some nuclear reactions in there. Then, you know, glacial melting took place. What about this? What's that? Independence Day. Aliens coming down, finishing the end of the earth, you know. What's that? Will Smith in I Am a Legend. Pandemic happening. Everybody dies in the world except Will Smith because he's got special immunity, you know. Fine. And that's Hollywood. And then Deep Impact. How an asteroid comes and finishes off the earth. That's Hollywood. And then Planet of the Apes. Those of us who are older would saw the 1968 version. And those of us in the modern age would see the 2011 version. Nuclear war and the apes take over the earth. And then there are false prophets that have come. All kinds of false prophets. You don't have to think about false prophets in Christianity. All religions have false prophets. Nostradamus, a French, false prophet, basically a seer of some sort, you know, and he's written a book called Nostradamus, and many people read a book, but if you got the book, please burn it, because this is a false prophet. Some of his insights are satanic. Okay. Then you have modern apocalyptic figures, you know, and who are some of these modern apocalyptic figures? There's Jim Jones. In 1978, he led about 100 people into French Guyana and into Jonestown, in a special village where they were preparing for Armageddon, the end of the world. And he convinced them all his followers, he was a cultic figure, Jim Jones, and he convinced them all to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. And they all died. 100 over people died, including children, including families that died, following him into wherever it was, you know, because he convinced them the end of the world was coming. And then apocalyptic figures like David Koresh in 1993 in Waco, Texas. He got all his followers to come because he believed that the end of the world would start from his ranch in Waco, Texas. And they were abusive in that community, and eventually federal agents surrounded that building, that ranch, and they had a shootout with the federal agents, and they burned out the ranch and committed suicide. Apocalyptic figures like Shoko Asahara, the Om Shinriko sect, in 1995, let off sarin gas in the Tokyo Underground, killed 12 people and maybe injured 500 over people, because he was persuaded by Nostradamus. The end of the world was coming in 1998. He was persuaded by Nostradamus. He's still languishing in jail today, Shoko Asahara, awaiting for the execution of the death sentence upon him. Okay. And then you have Michael Herf Applewhite, who in 1997 led a techno-savvy, you know, UFOs, outer space kind of group. And he persuaded his followers to commit suicide with him because he said that he had received revelation that a flying saucer would come and take all the true followers of his out of this world and out of this planet, because the end of the world was coming. So we had people like that. Christians, like William Milner in the 1840s, got his followers, that's 5,000 followers in the United States, to wait on top of a hill overnight because he had predicted that at midnight Jesus would come back. That didn't happen, and he told people he had got his calculations wrong. Jesus would come back the following year, he said. So the following year they met again. Again, you know, it's amazing. People are gullible. The following year more people waited than the original 5,000. And of course Jesus didn't turn up. And so he died in obscurity, he died in shame. There's Edgar Wizard. Edgar Wizard, in the recent years, in 1988, maybe he's been influenced by the Chinese figures because Chinese people love the word 88, you know, love the numbers 88. But Edgar Wizard in 88 wrote a book called 88 Reasons Why the Rapture is in 1988. And this book sold millions of copies. And he laughed all the way to the bank, but it never happened. And Christians will still buy books like that. And then Jack Van Impe, more recently, has been predicting the end of the world many, many times since the 1990s. He's still predicting the end of the world in particular days and months and years and people still continue to believe in him. So, this end of the world expectation, this whole thing about when the end of the world is coming, when the suddenly is coming, this has started since the days of the first century. If you read the Bible, you will find that there are some expectations that Jesus is coming back again soon. And you see the feeling there that it's imminent. So from the first century AD, they already felt that Jesus would come back soon. Of course, that wasn't fulfilled. So 500 AD was the next kind of nice date, and that didn't happen. And then 1000 AD, many people felt that the church felt that Jesus would come back in 1000 AD. And that was because the Carolingian Empire was ended just 100 years before. And then there was a total solar eclipse in 986 AD. And then Halley's Comet was sighted in 989. They said this was a sign from God in the heavens that Jesus is coming back again soon. Of course, that happened. 1000 AD, nothing happened. Jesus didn't come back. And in 1300 AD, the church again felt, the Middle Ages church, felt that Jesus was coming back because there was a great plague that took place and killed a third of Europe at that time. But that didn't happen either. If you read Matthew 24:25, you will find that there are 3 unique signs of his second coming. Now, I'm a very simple man. Somebody say, he's a very simple man. So I'm a very simple man. I try to make things very simple. Some people, are you a pre-mill, A-mill, post-mill, or whatever mill, I am a rice mill or flour mill, but I don't know. I just have a very simple way of looking at the second coming of Jesus. If you read Matthew 24:25, you will find that Jesus gave 3 specific or unique signs about his second coming. And many people, when they look at all the things that's happening in the world, earthquakes, tsunami, AIDS, SARS, pandemics, avian flu, everything else, global financial collapses, and all that kind of thing, people say, Jesus coming again soon, these are signs. But actually, if you read Matthew 24:25, you will find that these are general signs. There's been earthquakes since the first century AD. There's been pandemics, and all kinds of diseases. That's new diseases that's flooded the world globally since the first century AD. There have been wars and rumors of wars, famines, and all kinds of things, and tsunamis. All these are general signs. So every time you see these things happening, don't get too excited. Don't say Jesus is coming back again soon, because these are general signs. But there are 3 unique signs. Okay? The first, Jesus said, is when the gospel will be preached to all the world, and then the end will come. Matthew 24, verse 14, Jesus said these words, and the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, then the end will come. Everybody say, the end will come. Jesus said it. When the gospel goes to all the nations, the end will come. That's the first unique sign. When is that going to happen? I don't know. Wycliffe Bible translators tell us that there are probably about 200 other minor languages to go. Minor languages to go before everybody hears the gospel. It doesn't mean that everybody will believe in the gospel, but representative from every ethnic group, every national group, every national speaking group, linguistic group will hear the gospel. The word ethne means nation, it means national speaking group. Every national speaking group doesn't have to follow national boundaries, will have the chance to hear the gospel. And when will that come? I don't know. But it's moving very, very fast. It can happen in your lifetime or my lifetime. I was walking through the Borneo jungle one day, and suddenly, in the Borneo jungles, I love jungle trekking. I was walking through the Borneo jungles, I was just trying to hack my way through the undergrowth, the thick tropical jungle, and suddenly I heard this. And Liverpool have scored, and Manchester United are 1-0 down. That's in the middle of the tropical rainforest in Borneo jungle, deep in the Borneo jungle. And I thought there were red devils, in the jungle. But apparently not. When I came to the clearing, I saw a longhouse. A longhouse. And there was a native tribal indigenous person watching television from a satellite and working his television with a generator. Now, 2 generations or a generation and a half ago, his forefathers were headhunters in loincloths. And now he was wearing quite similar clothes to mine, a bit more simply, but he was watching television. And what was happening at Anfield or Old Trafford was being beamed into his longhouse. And I thought to myself, my goodness me, The gospel has a chance to go right across the world. Cable, internet, television, satellite, all kinds of things. Twitter, email, it just can go all around the world. You won't know it. But Jesus says, the day that the gospel is preached to all the world, the end will come. It could be in your lifetime. Here's the second sign that it can come. The second sign is the abomination of the desolation. Matthew 24, verse 15 to 27. Now, the reason why I read all this is just to give you a background to Matthew 24, 25. That truly is about the end times. Truly is about the fact that if you are ready for the end times, then you're ready for suddenly. And the way you are ready for the end times, if you understand the four parables of Matthew 24, 25. Now, the second sign is the abomination of desolation. Verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, everybody say, abomination of desolation. Spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. Whoever reads, let him understand. Then let him not go down from the rooftop, etc., 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 because the end will come. Now, what is the abomination of the desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel? Jesus tells us this. If you understand the abomination of the desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, you will know that's the second sign of my coming again. Now, the abomination of the desolation has something to do with the desecration of the temple and the enforced end to temple sacrifice. How do we know this? Because the book of Daniel tells us this. Here it is, in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. Then he, that's the Antichrist, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offerings. He will bring an end to sacrifice and offerings. And on the wing of the abomination shall be one who makes desolate. Now there's another reference to that as well. And forces shall be mustered by him, that's the Antichrist, and they shall defile the sanctuary and fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of the desolation. In other words, the abomination of desolation has to do with the end of temple sacrifice and the desecration of the temple. And they will place there the abomination of desolation. Read it again in Daniel 12, verse 11. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. From the time the daily sacrifice is taken away. So the abomination of desolation has something to do with the end of temple sacrifice and the desecration of the Jewish temple. Now the question is, when will this take place? Now we know historically the Jewish temple has been desecrated before. In about 167 BC, Antiochus Epiphanes, one of the Greek kings, came and desecrated the temple. I entered the temple, the Holy of Holies, set up a pig head. I threw a pig head into the Holy of Holies, erected a statue of Zeus, the Greek god Zeus, in the Holy Temple, desecrated it. But the end of the world didn't come. So it wasn't that time. It has been desecrated. The abomination, desecration of desolation had happened before. It again happened in the year 70 AD, when the Emperor Titus, the General Titus, the son of the Emperor Vespasian, sacked Rome, burned down the Holy Temple, desecrated it. Jesus did come back in 70 AD. So it could not refer to either of these happenings. For the abomination of desolation to take place, there must firstly be a temple. There must secondly be a day offerings to the temple and stock. And thirdly, the temple has to be desecrated. So when will it take place? In the future. There will be a future desecration of the Jewish temple. Now, right now, there is no Jewish temple. Right now, there is no sacrifice by the Orthodox Jews of Israel. Now, they only meet in synagogues. Synagogues are not places of sacrifice. The Orthodox Jews will only sacrifice if there is a temple. But that temple, even though Israel has been re-established as a nation, that temple up to now has never been rebuilt. Why is that? Because on top of the Temple Mount sits Islam's third holiest site, which is the dome on the rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And if the Jews or Israel destroy this site and build their temple, Third World War will start. So there's no way they can do it. And God in His wisdom has planted a mosque there. It's incredible.